I hope you are really fired up for tonight's Yakkin with Yuri. I've sent invites out to both Rebecca and Sunny, so hopefully here we go. Let's try this again. Into the conversation, but I hope you're ready for a rip-roaring time tonight. There you are, Sunny. Yes! Technology works. Can you hear both? Yeah, hey, you guys.
How's it going?
Going really well. I'm super excited to get this started. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Is this the first time you guys have seen each other since ITI?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I didn't know what Sunny's face looked like because it was all covered.
Well, this is the big reveal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
awesome.
Yeah, so I'm just going to jump right into this. So this is Yakkin with Yuri. This has to be probably one of my favorite episodes tonight. Tales from the Iditarod with two just amazing athletes who I have a tremendous amount of respect for and admiration. Rebecca Rusch and Sunny Stroeer. So I'm just going to start with some intros here before we jump into their respective Iditarod experiences because they both did it on different vehicles. So Sunny grew up in Germany. She played tennis. She didn't discover trail running until she was 25. She has an MBA from Harvard. At the age of 30, she gave up Wall Street for big mountain walls and living in a van named Eddie. So we're going to have to talk about, there's a whole vehicle thing here and nomads and all of this and rock climbing that you guys may not even know about each other. We'll get to it. I see your face, Queenie. I know. Just wait. She is an award-winning adventure photographer, record-setting athlete. She has 2 FKTs in Aconcagua. She's the owner and guide at Dreamland Safari Tours. I got to experience one of her tours this New Year's. We actually were together at New Year's talking about Iditarod and the fact that you hadn't even started training yet.
And living in a van while you were in.
And living in a van. So yeah, everything was hitting there. If I haven't said it already, she's the founder of AWE Expeditions, AWE, and that stands for All Women Expeditions. So she's empowering, more women to go out and take on these big challenges like Aconcagua or other massive peaks. So welcome, Sunny Stroeer.
Thank you, Yuri. You're making me blush, so stop talking about me.
Well, I'm blushing too. I told you guys I was going to try not to fanboy too hard, so I'm trying to stay in my seat here. So this one I hope I don't tear up for, because Reba and I, we go way back. She actually got into sports in high school because she liked the way the tracksuit looked. Before van life, there was Bronco life, and that was Reba. She lived in her Bronco when she decided to give up all of her earthly possessions and go rock climbing and live out of her Ford Bronco. We'll have to talk about that crazy life, like right 30 years forward now. She has a new Bronco, but we can talk about that. She's an author, a book called Rusch to Glory. If you haven't read it, you should, which she's actually said was her hardest experience ever in her life, which is saying something considering her palmares and all the crazy shit she's done in her life. She's an entrepreneur. She started the Be Good Foundation in honor of her father. She's an Emmy Award winner. Right? I mean, I'm going to run out of, but I'm just going to keep going. I have to keep throwing these out there just so people know. An Emmy Award winner for a movie that you guys will all need to see at some point. She's ridden the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is 1,200 miles. Few people know this. She's boogie boarded the Grand Canyon and holds the record for it. And she's not even really into water. She's a seven-time world champion in a few different cycling disciplines, 24-hour, single speed, and I think cyclocross, maybe you got one there too or something, and maybe ski because it's in your backyard, possibly.
Yeah.
Just because. Yeah. She's an event creator. If you guys aren't familiar with Rebecca's Private Idaho, you need to get out to her Private Idaho and ride it and check it out. It was voted one of 25 best rides in the world by Outside Magazine. I can attest. I've been to every year of it, and it is a truly magical place to ride your bike in, push your limits. She has a spirit animal or insect, kind of like me. She's a wife to a firefighter, Greg, who we used to race against each other, he and I, years ago. A dear, dear friend, obviously, inspiration, and she's a sharer of soup.
Oh, yes.
That's a little personal story there about she and I. Also, I forgot a couple more things, sorry. Mountain Bike Hall of Fame inductee and a 3-time Iditarod finisher. But that was a mouthful. I'm kind of parched, so I told you guys to have beers.
Ew.
So here we go. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers to you guys. It's so good to see you guys. And yes,
You've got the Iditarod beer. Good job, Sunny. You've been saving that one.
yeah, thematic.
Nice.
Yeah, and I didn't mention it, but her movie is Blood Road. For you, those of you out there not familiar with it, you should check it out. Very, very inspiring film. So now that I've got all of that, the formalities right out of the way, let's get into some fun storytelling here about the Iditarod. And I told you guys I wasn't going to have questions, but then I hit you at the last minute with just a tad bit of structure. So Reba, as a 3-time veteran, I wanted you to describe the what. What is Iditarod? And explain like how you can do it, supported, unsupported, and what vehicles you can use. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Iditarod Trail is the famous dog sled race that's been going on for 50 years. The iconic trail it's really the connector between all of these remote villages in Alaska, from Anchorage all the way up to the tip of Nome. And in the winter, this trail is the only access for people to these native villages to get to each other, the small towns to be connected. It's really this umbilical cord. And so it has this deep history of being a connector. And the way people travel on that trail is either snow machine or dog sleds or skis or on bikes. And it really, traditionally, it's been snow machine and dog sleds has been the traditional form of travel. 20 years ago, the human-powered, and they have the Iditarod Trail, the Iditarod dog sled race that everybody knows is iconic, famous, world known. The Iditarod Trail Invitational is the human-powered version of that, and this year was the 20th anniversary. And you can do the trail, and we follow the same exact trail as the dogs. We start a week earlier, and you can do a 350-mile version, which typically goes to the town of McGrath. And you have to start there. You can't just jump into the 1,000-miler. So all rookies do the 350 first. You've got to qualify for this event. You can't just sign up. And then there's a 1,000-mile version. And so the 350 on the human-powered event, it takes, I don't know, fastest times are 3 days, up to 8 days, 10 days, depending on weather conditions. The 1,000-mile can take a month on the trail. And so it's really intense. It's in remote Alaska. It is very limited resources. And the human-powered event, you can do it on bike, you can do it on foot, or you can do it skiing. And so there's 3 modes of travel, and really, but we share all kind of the same rules in that you carry your own equipment. Everybody has 2 food drops that you send 2 weeks ahead of time to Alaska, and it gets dropped off by plane in the middle of nowhere. And you get 2 of those for the whole race. And other than that, there's a few small remote cabins along the way. There's a few little lodges that you can get into to resupply. But you're really out there alone, and you're really quite self-supported. It's a classic event. It's not for everyone. Just to give you a scope of the scale, 50 people started this year, which is about a typical amount. I think 75 is their maximum. Typically more than half don't finish. So that's just kind of the scale of what you're doing. And there's no rescue. You're getting yourself out of there. If you need to get out, you basically have to, get out your credit card and hire a small plane to come get you in the middle of nowhere. So it's very, very committing. And I will say, I swore I would never do it. I don't like cold. I never had any appeal to me. And so it's kind of weird for me to sit here and go, yeah, I'm a 3-time, veteran, 3-time finisher. I'm pretty proud of it because it is the most committing, hardest event I've done. And because of the conditions, because of where you are.
There's so much to unpack here, but real quickly, you can also do it supported or unsupported, and you've done it both ways. This year, you did it unsupported, and years prior, you were supported. Can you maybe just explain what that looks like for folks? And then, Sunny, I'm coming to you for the why. Why would you do this? Yeah.
That's the big question. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah, this year they implemented, the course was different this year, and I really appreciate what Kyle did, the race director, because of COVID safety. The last race I did was 2020, coming out from finishing the Iditarod in March to COVID, full blown. And so a year later, this was the first one back. Really conscious. He actually, for the first time ever, the dog and human powered race, they changed the course. And they made it an out and back course. And the reason for that is that they didn't want to impact the remote native villages. And so we didn't go any villages who have no health care, they're isolated. And so it really, the character of the race, so it was an out back. It made it really cool because I got to see Sunny, see some other competitors. But he also implemented some pretty strict rules in the little support cabin, that there could only be a certain number of people in there at a time and stuff like that. And Greg and I just started thinking, well, you know, what if we get to a cabin and there's already 10 people in there, can't go in, and we're depending on that. And Kyle, the race director, implemented first time ever a self-support cabin. What that meant is that you didn't use any of the cabins or the lounge or get any water or food, give supplies. So it meant like we just signed the little, like going in and getting burritos. We just like sign the paper outside and like walk away. We still had our 2 drops, but we didn't go inside a shelter or get any supplies other than our own for days. So, and my goal, like, one, I'm like, let's try to do this, one, for safety, but 2, if I ever want to do a 1,000-mile, this is a really good way to practice. Can I really survive in the wilderness without going inside that warm, cozy, like sit by the fire and soup? And they have soup inside there too. So I was like, can I do it without soup? And I could. I really surprised myself. And I will say it was the best executed expedition I've done in my life. I'm extremely proud of the way and the style that my husband and I did it. And we finished, you know, we finished 6th and 7th overall. But keeping in mind, we were the only ones who completed it self-supported. So that meant probably 2 hours a day, we're melting snow, boiling water, drinking water. And so not to like take anything away, but if we took off those 2 hours a day dealing with water, drinking water, I'm like, fuck, I'm about to run the whole thing.
Well, and then building a bivvy, I saw your bivvy setup, and all of that takes time. So yeah, that's amazing. I didn't realize this was the first year of the unsupported category. It doesn't surprise me that you, of course, go out and do it and take it as maybe prep for the 1,000, which is just, so let's talk about the why. Sunny, why would you sign up for something like this?
Well, obviously, because you get Iditarod beer.
Cheers, of course. It's the beer. Yeah.
No, in all honesty, I think the why is a really difficult question. Obviously, I personally didn't do it for speed or to win. You know, what Rebecca did say is that she was the women's winner. I was dead freaking last, not just in the women's field, but overall. Like, I was the last person across the line in the cutoff.
Let's pause for 1 second, because I just want to preface this for people. So you did it on skis, and when I talked to Jay Peterberry, who you spoke with, who's an Iditarod legend, Reba knows, he's done it, I think, 10, 11 times. When I asked Jay to connect the 2 of you so you guys could share knowledge, he was like, oh, why would she do it on skis? That's the worst way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
Skis are hard, and I'm not a skier. I learned to cross-country ski like about 2 weeks before this race. So, you know, there's a whole host of things here, but what I'm trying to say is I'm not doing it for speed. I'm not doing it for glory, trying to win or place or whatever. What I was for, and I think something that a lot of educational folks share in common is that, you know, you're out there, as Rebecca was saying, like you're way out there, you're on your own, there's no rescue. This is an adult race where, you know, there's no mandatory kit or like that. Like, you're on your own. You're responsible for the consequences. And that means that you really get your limits. And I love that. You know, to me, pretty much all of my pursuits, anything endurance related, is all about how I react to circumstances that are me, how I react to places and in situations where I just don't know what's going to happen. And the funny thing about all of that is that I'm actually super risk averse. So I don't want to go out my boundaries and continue to expand my comfort zone by going up on those, massive peaks where you're going to be dealing with rockfall and avalanche, whatever. So something like Iditarod, you're out there, it's really limit push, really boundary, but in a way, it's in a non-way. So it's super new, it's super cool, it's super exciting, it's super difficult. Not one of those things where you make a decision and in the next second you're dead. And I like.
Yeah, and so let's just talk. So skis, you were 11 days, and Reba, you were self-supported in 4 days?
Those 10. Those 10
days.
Very important. The cutoff is
I was
below the cutoff.
Yeah. And you were?
Honestly, Sunny, you were not last. Like, you finished. And like I said, 50% of the people don't make it there. So absolutely, like, amazing for your rookie year and for someone who just barely learned to ski. I did not know that.
We were sitting together at New Year's. I got to partake in a Dreamland Safari tour, folks. If you haven't done one, look them up. They're in Kanab. We spent New Year's there, and we were sitting on this mesa, and Sunny was like, kind of like, yeah, I should probably start doing something with some cross country skiing. Iditarod's coming up, and I was like, what? You haven't skied yet? Like, and you're gonna do this thing? So just the utmost respect to you. And I just keep hearing Jay's words, like, why would she want to do it on skis? And then I think about that you hadn't really done anything on skis.
Which is probably the only reason that I do it on skis, because if I had skied before, and it would have been atrocious and too brutal.
So, Sunny, would you do it again? And what mode of transportation would you choose?
In fact, I'm going to. I signed again.
Wait, so sorry, you cut out for a minute. You're doing it again, but on which mode of transport?
Skis again.
Okay. Because you feel like you could do better now? You've learned a ton and you want to do it more cleanly? Is that why?
I think I can actually do it. I think I'm going to be able to do it well, and I course record. Plus,
course record. She's going for the course record.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, this woman has confidence through the roof. Jeez.
Or on a call, I know what I'm getting myself into. And yeah, I signed up within, I think, 2 hours of the applications for the next.
Yeah. Endurance amnesia. It's a killer, huh? We forget how bad it was, and then we want to do it again. That's what I love about you two. Let's talk about the prep, because this was one of the fun things about my role as a lead athlete manager at GU is sometimes I get to play matchmaker and bring amazing people together to share knowledge, right? And that's how we can all be better people, learn, sort of teacher student here. And Reba, you being the veteran, I connected you and Sunny. So I don't know who wants to take this, but can you guys talk a little bit about, like, maybe that conversation or conversations, or maybe Sunny, you lead with, like, what were your biggest questions for the Queen of Pain?
Oh yeah, I'll do that. So first off, thank you, Rebecca, because your brain to pick his brain, and then Lars Danner, who is a veteran who skied it, that was invaluable for me, given that about Alaska or this distance or being in the cold or skiing. Rebecca, you helped me honestly with pretty much everything but this. The big question that I had was, for you, most surprising thing in your rookie year, what did you wish that you would have known before you? And the advice I got was, listen, it's going to be so hard to hold. And you actually told me, I don't remember, but you told me, said, listen, go and snacks, put them in the freezer and see what works.
Yeah, and you're cutting out a little, Sunny, so I'm going to repeat what you said, because I remember, and I will say I really appreciated that you did your homework and you talked to Lars, you talked to JP, you talked to these veterans, because when Yuri's like, oh, this girl Sunny wants to talk to you about doing Iditarod, she's a rookie, and I'm like, oh, fucking God, like, because I'm like, I don't know this person. I don't have time for her, and I, because of Yuri and Gu and our connection, and I knew about you, and I'm like, okay, she's like a legit athlete. She's not just, somebody, but I was also like, geez, how do I condense it down? Because I did the same as you. I called up Jay. I called up these people. I took notes. I still have that same notebook. And so I appreciated that you did your homework, and all you had for me was that one question: what do you wish that you know, had known the first year? And what I said to you is, I really had trouble eating. I mean, that first year, eating food was like my downfall, and I eventually just stopped doing it and cannibalized myself, and just like ran in on fumes because I couldn't eat and I didn't have the right food and I wasn't prepared for it. And so I did tell Sunny, like, put all your food in the freezer and let it sit for 3 days and then try to eat it and see if you can put it in your mouth. And like everything from goo chews to, and that's where I was like, take Roctane drink mix, take a warm thermos, do hot water. And I told her that the stuff that the only things I could get down were warm water, you know, recovery drink warms every day, and certain things that you can use at home on your normal training just don't work when they're frozen. And so the food has been a big learning curve for me. So I'm glad you were able to eat. I know when we saw each other on the trail, which was so cool about the out and back, I had a packet of chews and we like held it up. We're like, yeah. And you looked so good. Like and for reference, you guys, I'm on my way home. I'm like smelling the barn. And I was like, oh my God, they're on their way out. Like, they still have a long way to go, you know. But you guys were smiling. You buddied up with another person. Like, I just loved the energy of the out and back, because normally you're on the trail and you really are alone. You may see one or two people around you, but otherwise it's very much a solitary thing. And so the out and back was so cool, because it's like, normally I don't see the skiers or the people, and it's like these high fives of like this nod of like, yeah, I know, I got you. But I felt so bad because we're like going towards home and the people still going out. I was like, sorry. Yeah, you got like 2 more days of uphill, but you're good. Good job.
You know,
Go ahead, Sunny.
so the big thing for me was, and this was part of my entire conundrum here, being a first timer, you know, rookie, being a newbie, being not having any train. So, you know, Yuri, when we saw, they not only did not have skis at the time yet, I hadn't been training at all, right? So busy in a first year small business owner type of life that I've had no time. I've had mileage of probably less than a mile on average for a couple of weeks. It was like nothing, right? And then I started up and I was determined to go to Alaska. I'm glad Rebecca, I did my homework before he was. I was like, I don't care doing this. Like, I know. I ended up not qualifying, right? I just sweeped my way into it, and I tried really my way into the 1,000. Really didn't happen. But anyway, so I had massive imposter syndrome. But also what happened was that because I was so poorly trained, I had to take the early days of the race to get stronger. But I was so slow was that I slept a full night every single at the very start. I think the longest that I ever slept 4 hours, and the most was 8. And only days that I started pushing and only power now. So yeah, I was pretty jealous of you. I saw you going home, but I was like, you know, out here for gonna keep going.
You slept a lot more than we did, I guess. I'll say that. The most we slept was 4 hours a night. And Sunny, I'm gonna suggest maybe try turning off your internet and just going on your cell, because you're cutting out a little, and I want to hear every word that you're saying.
I know.
And sometimes the internet makes it weird. So try your cell and jump back in if we lose you.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, cool.
Real quickly, for folks who don't know, the photo that was used for tonight's IG Live is the photo of Reba and Sunny intersecting on the trail. And it's one of my favorite ever. When I got that, I think you sent it to me, Reba, maybe shortly after you finished. And it's just like, it warmed my heart to see you two connect like that. But I do want to circle back to the fuel. And I know so much of it is beyond goo, and I don't even really care what's connected to goo at this point. But let's talk about some of the fuel that you uniquely created, Reba, to help. I mean, I'm a bacon lover. I know you created other things specifically for this. I'm wondering if you could share some of that, because you got creative in the kitchen.
Yeah, totally. And I will say that that trail moment, that photo that you talked about, that is a real like moment on the trail. And what was so special is like any endurance athlete can relate to this. You see somebody else who's kind of suffering in the same way you are, and there's this instant like, oh my God, there's another person. I need to hug them. And it was like, oh my God, it's Sunny and a woman. First, I'm like, there's two women. And I was so stoked because Sunny was on skis and the other girl she was with was on foot. And I'm like, it's ski, foot, bike. Like it was all the disciplines.
The triathlon.
Yeah. And I was with Greg and I'm like, quick, take a picture of all of us. And it was just a really cool moment on the trail, just showing how like bonding and connective trails and athletics and endurance sports are. And so my hands were freezing too, but I'm like, we're taking a fucking picture. We're doing it.
Yeah.
So that was the real deal. And Sunny, I could see, was a little cross-eyed. I could see you were tired and you're kind of like, and I'm like, get out a goo packet. We're like taking a picture. So that was, I love that picture too, because it was real and it was in the moment. And I really felt like I was wanting to give you all my energy to like finish the trail, and you did. So food, we'll go back to food. And yeah, it was my biggest mistake year one. I only survived year one on pure grit and, you know, decades of experience as an endurance athlete, because the way I performed, like for me, it was a shit show. And sorry to swear on Instagram.
That's okay.
But
you already dropped a couple F-bombs, so it's all good. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I finished and I was proud of finishing, but I wasn't proud of how I finished. And the food and the fuel was the big deteriorating factor. I was basically running on empty and hanging on till the finish line. And so I came home and I did a bunch of research with Roxanne at GU, with my coach, and just like, I need to figure out how to eat. And so I went to the drawing board and I knew that Roctane works, warm drinks work, and you take the time. You're like, get out your stove, you boil water, you know, it's a process, but I know I can always get those liquid calories in. And so that's kind of a standby for me. But then I also, you start to evaluate how much does something weigh? How many calories do you get out of it? Do you get micronutrients, macronutrients? Do you get protein, fat? Do you get carbohydrates? And I got kind of geeky into, you know, breaking it down. But then also, like I said to Sunny, if it's in the freezer, can you put it in your mouth when it's frozen? Or do you want to eat it when it's out there? I mean, like, I know there's stories of John Stamstead, who's like, you know, the famous, like the original ultra endurance athlete. He would just take like Spam on the trail.
Yeah.
And because high calorie, high fat, but if it doesn't taste good to you, you're not going to eat it. So my standbys now, after, you know, a few years of a lot of winter expeditions, are I always make bacon. I make like 3 pounds of bacon at home. And I put it in little baggies. It's 400 calories a bag. And I know like 4 pieces of bacon, 1 piece is 100 calories. And it's super lightweight. It's super high calorie. And it always tastes good to me. And on my last Iceland expedition, my guide teammates, they were like trying to get my bacon. I'm like, no. You don't get my bacon. So bacon, Roctane, GU Roctane, Summit tea flavor always goes down, warm water or cold water, but I really like warm water in cold environments. GU recovery drink. And then I make these trail cookies now that are my standby. And I've done a lot of experimenting, and Lentine Alexis designed them for me. She's a chef and nutritionist.
Yeah.
And they're basically oats and dried fruits and nuts and ginger. And I make them in little teeny balls so that you can pop them in your mouth without having to chew them. And same in Iceland, the guys were like, do you have any more of those cookies? And I'm like, no. So I feel like I have a really good like base, and then there's other stuff like, you know, gummies or other things taste good, but really that's my core now. And so I kind of feel like I could do anything now that I have that sort of the 4 basic food groups for me that really work.
Yeah. Sunny, did you have any food epiphanies, you know, with your experience? Did you adopt the bacon? Did you make any custom stuff? Like, walk us through what a lot of people are commenting on: pocket bacon for the win. So yes. Yeah.
I'm second. A lot of good chews actually, and that was based on Rebecca's advice. Put this in the freezer and see what works. And the chews were great because they're bite size, and you know, you can still suck on them and enjoy them even if they're frozen because the core stays soft. But then the other thing that was my absolute favorite was, big surprise, bacon with dried mango, and dried dates.
Yeah.
And the only reason that was because can you guys still hear me? I'm kind of.
It's coming in and out, but
slow.
it's better than it was. Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting it.
Okay, you guys are a lot worse than. Anyway, so it was bacon mixed with dried mango and dried dates, and it was freaking amazing. The only reason that I put all three together was because I was running out of Ziplocs. I meant separate, and now I actually make that at home all the time to have just a big bag of Sunny's Gorp in my pantry because it is incredible. So yeah, mango, dates, and bacon.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can, Reba or Sunny, and I know, Reba, you struggle with this your first year. Talk about the mechanics of eating, because I don't know if people totally get like why it's so hard if they're not familiar with what's covering you, and why it was hard to drink too. So maybe walk us through that, because the picture that we use to advertise this, you have your, your breathing devices off and stuff like that. So they aren't familiar with what's covering this. So go ahead.
Yeah, so that picture was actually really warm and sunny. I think it was probably like maybe 0 degrees, which in Alaska is really fucking warm. It gets down to like -40, -50, -20 is kind of normal temperatures in Alaska. And so you got your skin covered most of the time, because exposed skin in those temperatures are going to freeze, or you're going to get windburn, sunburn, or anything else. And so most of the time you've got on goggles, you've got on a face mask, you're like trying not to steam up everything. And so in order to eat something, and you've got gloves on. And so in order to put something in your mouth, you got to take your face mask down, you got to unzip a bunch of stuff, you've got to get the food, take the glove off, get the food out, get it out of the package, put it in your mouth just for one bite of food. And so you can imagine, you just kind of end up being like, oh, it's too hard, I can't do it, and you end up getting late. And with drinking, so you're wearing your hydration pack next to skin. Basically, it's just under your base layer so that it doesn't freeze. And so anytime you want to take a drink, you're unzipping 6 coats, finding the hose that's down in your armpit, getting it out, taking it, putting it back in, or you're stopping and opening a thermos of warm water. And so it's not like riding a mountain bike, you reach down, grab a water bottle, woohoo.
Yeah.
So when you try to think about, okay, I try to eat like 4,000 calories a day based on moving for 18 hours. And so you start to do the math and you're like, geez, that's a lot of food to try to get in. So it's the logistics of actually accessing your mouth that is the hardest part. And it requires, if you're a racer, you're a competitive person, it actually requires stopping. And that was one of the hardest things for me in cold environments, is that you have to stop like every 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to take off a layer, put food in your mouth. It's a lot slower process just to take care of your body. And I think that's my first year, my rookie year, I was racer mentality and I didn't want to stop. I just wanted to go. And so I think that was something that I didn't do well, because I just physically didn't put the food in my mouth. I just carried it through Alaska because it was too hard to eat, or it was frozen, or it was in a zip. Like, even to give you another like little interesting tidbit, I don't use the Ziploc bags now that have the zips on them. I use plastic bags that are like the fold over type that you had when you were a kid.
Probably easier to get into.
Yeah, because I actually cut my face the first year because plastic is like a razor in the cold, and trying to open a Ziploc bag with your mouth, and I was like getting cuts on my face from the Ziploc bag. So there's things like that that make you just not want to eat.
Yeah.
That it's a real process, and it's really pretty freaking hard.
Yeah.
Hi, Sunny. Welcome back.
Well,
Hi, sorry, I heard everything, but
okay.
Okay.
All good, Sunny. Do you have anything else you'd like to share about like the mechanics of eating before? I have a few other questions. I mean, I could talk to you two all night. Like, this is so rad, but do you have anything else to share on like the mechanics of eating, or any food epiphanies you had this year beyond what Reba has just said?
I think I'm blessed in that I'm always starving and I always eat. So it doesn't matter how hard it is, I'm going to figure out a way to do that. My biggest issue was actually that I thought I had packed really rich and had a lot of calories with me. I was running out. So having having warm calories, all of that. By the way, I wasn't unsupported. I went to points and I ate hot stew, right? But yeah, you know, having all of that was really helpful, but I still ended up coming up short and almost bonked on the very last because I bought that Yentma station had as the last, ate all of them.
Yeah. Bunch of people are asking about your cookie recipe, Reba. I think you've responded there. It's on the website. But let's kind of shift gears here away from food a little bit, just to talk about some moments, because I thought it was really cute, Reba, that you're like, I don't really care what I have to say. I want to hear about Sunny's first-timer stories, you know, like some stories from the trail. And that's what tonight's chat is, right? Tales from the Iditarod. So I'm going to throw the same questions at both of you, but like, maybe your like nature aha moment this year. Did you have one of those, like Sunny, like where you just hit a spot and you were like, this is why I'm doing it? And I'd be curious to hear if you had one this year, Reba.
I think I did. I had one moment on day 3 where I was skiing on my own. It was wicked cold day. Well, not Alaska standards, you know, but probably -10 or so. So still manageable. And I was out there and I was towards the Alaska range out on this massive mountain, nobody in sight. And I was already pretty tired along, and the moon was up above the mountain. It was just beautiful. And I had found my stride. I knew that, you know, I was making the distance, but I was going to be out there for 10 years. You know, I'm focused on this and on nothing else. And it doesn't matter whatever else is happening in the world, purely this moment. And
those are extremely special moments that we've all had in some way, shape, or form. Those of us who enjoy pushing our boundaries like that. I can't even imagine in such a like otherworldly place like where you guys were. Reba, I mean, you have 3 years of ITI experience to draw from. I'm sure you've had many aha, like nature moments. I've seen some of the photos from the different passes. Is there one that rises to the top of your 3 years, or maybe there was one from this year that you could share with us?
I mean, there's the high point of the course, which is Rainy Pass, is always a really special place for me. And because it was an out and back, we actually got to do it twice this year. And it's special for me because I remember my rookie year, everyone had built up Rainy Pass, Rainy Pass. It's like notoriously it can be 50-mile-an-hour winds, bad weather, and like, and my first year I had a good crossing. It was like calm and quiet, and I remember standing at that summit and thinking, man, I need to bring my husband here. I need to bring Greg here. And I think why Rainy Pass is so special for me in that area is it looks a lot like Idaho, and I just felt like I was home, and like this is like my kind of place. And I just looked around and I'm like, I'm in Alaska, but I'm home. And this year I felt the same way. It's a really special place to cross that pass and to cross it twice and then to get safely over. And you know, there's animal encounters all along the way. I will say this year something that was really special was I think it was like our third night. I think we were leaving Finger Lake, still on the way out, maybe at mile like 125 or so. We just gotten our first food drop and heading into the dusk. And Greg is riding in front of me, and all around him, there's probably 25 different sets of wolf and lynx prints. And so you see his bike track going into the sunset, and just all around him, all these animal prints. And I wasn't scared. I just felt like so in tune with the place and like how special, like one bike track and then all these other animal prints. And we never saw the animals, but I just felt really connected in that moment. And I took a picture, and I was just like taking pictures of animal prints and bike prints, and just like how cool to like be among them. That's how I felt.
It's funny what you say there, Rebecca. It's like Greg out there. That's pretty much my number one reaction. And as a matter of fact, Paul and I have talked about going out there together. And, you know, he's not an endurance athlete and he's 61 years old. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge, right? But we've talked about both getting to hiking in order to be able to do it together, not fast, but, you know, just be out on the course and experience that together. Such an incredible experience, such an incredible landscape, and privilege to be out there. I really haven't had an adventure that's been as impactful as this one.
That's saying, I mean, that's really saying something. I don't know if the audience understands what, I mean, coming from two folks who've been all over the world on top of some of the most amazing mountains and some of the most remote, crazy places when you were doing Eco Challenge and stuff like that, Reba, or boogieing down the Grand Canyon, like to hear that this one place and this experience has impacted you in that way is really powerful. And I want to circle back to something that I find really impressive, I think for both of you, but mainly you, Reba, too, is that fear, right? This idea, you were fearful of cold. We've talked about this, right? That was one of your biggest fears. And oftentimes, right, any of us, right, we have some of our biggest breakthroughs, right, when we tackle our fears or we conquer our fears or whatever. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you know, maybe 3 years ago, thinking about going into ITI. I mean, your biggest fear was the cold. I mean, cold will kill you. No questions asked out there. Kill you quick.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, and probably why it's such a powerful experience is that Alaska in the winter is an unsustainable environment for a human. We are not meant to survive there. It's like being on the moon. You need special equipment, you need all this stuff, you need the shelters, you know, we are not meant to survive there. And so it's truly special to be able to do it and to pull it off is like, wow. We got to go to Alaska in the winter and we survived because it truly is inhospitable. It's unsurvivable, you know, and you have so much respect for the people that live there, the animals that live there. And we truly are a guest, you know, we are a guest and hopefully you survive. And yeah, my first year, I went in absolutely, you know, the dominating emotion was fear, terrified, absolutely. Scared like I was gonna die.
Yeah, that's a reality. You have to be prepared for that. Like you said, no one's coming to get you.
And honestly, the reason I didn't stop and I wasn't eating is I was just trying. I carried all this equipment that like, I'm not using the stove. I'm not using the sleeping bag. There is no fucking way I'm sleeping outside. So I'm carrying all this stuff with no intention of using it. Even though everybody said, you got to know how to use your stove and you got to use it. And so I had to sleep on my last night out. I had to sleep out because I couldn't make it to this hut that was 2 miles away. I couldn't make it. And I had to get in that sleeping bag. I got in with all my clothes on, my boots on, my puffy coat. And I sent an in-reach satellite to my husband. Like, I'm sleeping out. I'm stopping. Like, I have to, because I was falling over. I was hallucinating. I was falling asleep. I was empty. And I had to pull over. I had to get in the sleeping bag for 2 hours. And I like took pine branches from the tree to like put under me. Like it was truly survival.
Yeah.
And I survived and I woke up. I'll send you a picture. Like I took a selfie being like, this might be my last picture I ever take of myself. But going in from that year and then learning like Sunny did, she did a lot better her first year than I did. I wanted to go back the second year because I knew I could survive and I wanted to clean it up. So my second year, I was more prepared. And my third year, even more prepared. And so it's really cool to see the trajectory of fear to basically respect for the environment. And then the confidence of like, I'm going to do this self-supported, going from like not intending to use my sleeping bag to going, no, I am intending to not go inside any building. Like, that's a pretty fast trajectory and I'm really proud of it. And it's people like Sunny who come in with expedition experience. Yes, she was a rookie. She hadn't skied, but she came in with a lifetime of expedition experience in climbing and in survival. And that's what you need. And when I asked JP, you're very like, I don't think I can do this. I was like Sunny. He's like, you're coming in with adventure racing, rock climbing, all this. Like you're coming in with the right core and the right grit. You just need to learn how the equipment and how to deal out there. And I expect, Sunny, you're going to see a really fast trajectory, which is really exciting. But I will say to the people listening, it is not for everybody. And you'll notice most of the athletes out there are, they're not 25 years old. That said, there was a 15-year-old kid who
rode
is
with Jay.
mentored by Jay Peterberry, and they rode as a team. But it takes a lot of years to sort of build up the durability and the grit to and the sort of lack of ego to do something like this.
Yeah, Sunny, I'm going to come at you with a similar question here, because I know, like Reba mentioned, you probably I'm going to assume have less of a fear of the cold because of your experience on Ockencock. No? Okay, a deep respect. Go ahead. Yeah.
About fear, for sure, fear was there for me 100%. I remember I was reading a book about the Iditarod Trail and the dogs out there historically on the flight up to Anchorage, and it talked about all of these and all of these dogs, like, freezing to the ground and falling in the water, and just people dying from the cold left and right. They should not be out there. What happens to me if I break, if I get wet, and if I can't start a fire? That's just the reality for anybody, really. That's the most dangerous thing out there, I think, other than mismanaging your own calories, mismanaging your own strategy. If you get wet, you don't have a way to warm up with shelter or with fire, you're dead. So, I was really, really scared of that. It took me a while to realize that, 70% of our frozen rivers, but that's okay. Most of the time, you're not going to go through the ice. Most of the time, you're going to be okay. But I do have expedition experience, so that helped, Rebecca, but I don't have experience, never had any experience for that. And that's points of safety.
Yeah.
Right? Because mountains, yes, you're way up high. Yes, things can go wrong. Yes, you're break, but the reality is, you turn around, start down. At least on the non-technical mountains that I do, you have an hour or two. You're somewhere at a ranger base camp, or you're going to be on the ITI. That you're in the middle of, you might be 30 miles in between, and you're not going to be okay unless you make sure that you yourself take care of yourself as you fire, stay warm, unless you're moving or be on top of yourself. So I definitely had a big fear factor out there as well.
Yeah. I talked to the race director, Kyle, and everyone's required to wear a satellite tracking device. So for those of you at home, you're watching our little dots. We have to carry those for safety. But Kyle, the race director, he's like, we're not coming if your dot hasn't moved. I think he said for 17 hours. He's like, we don't really pay any attention, unless it's been stopped for longer than that.
The woman that I was with, Sarah, I partnered up with racers. You were together for almost the entire race. We teamed up on day, and we didn't break apart until day 10, or day 9 and 3/4. And she ended up with really bad issues with her, and kind of her, and her energy. Long story, in big parts because she waited up for me early in the race. Later on, up with the pace that I had to go and put down. But was in that place for the last 2 nights. The last tried to take care of her a few times, and finally got to a point in between Lake and Yentna, which was a 60-mile stretch in between 8 stations. Right, that was the stretch in between checkpoints, where she said, okay, I can't do this. I have to drop, my feet are freezing. I can't get warm. I can't. So try to hit the try to get evacuated. And the race director, up to the closest checkpoint.
Yeah.
So we got in touch with Yentna, which was the roadhouse that was about 8 miles down from where we were crashed. That there was okay. Yentna's all it's 1 a.m. It's super cold out. Is it life-threatening? Sarah's like, well, no, probably not. My feet are really bad. I guess I'm going to be okay. And they're like, yeah, spend the night and then get yourself here to the roadhouse. We'll go from there. So it was literally a matter of, you're out on your own. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I think that level of commitment is what drew me to the race, is just knowing that you are depending on yourself. And you are your own EMT, you're your first responder, you're going to get yourself out because help is not close by and it's not coming. And, it's intimidating to do something that's that level of equipment or that level of commitment. But when you pull it off, you're like, wow, I can do anything. I am solid. Like, I know my husband and we can survive Armageddon. Like, we can, like the level of confidence of like, I oh, did I cut out? Sorry.
Little bit. That's okay. Like, just you're basically saying that you have such a level of confidence now that you're able to keep redrawing the line of possibility of what you think's possible with that, which essentially
Right.
means you're building the foundation for the 1,000.
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
I did take everything from Alaska to Iceland just, a couple weeks
Yeah.
after that. And that was a really big expedition. And I went with a couple guys who were, 20 years younger than me, less experienced in snow fat biking. And it was really cool to bring my expedition experience and be kind of like the one to sort of show them how to change a tire in 0-degree weather. And, that was really cool.
And you were the one with all the good snacks that they wanted. Hey,
Oh.
Burkhart, if you're watching, dude, start cooking some bacon, buddy. Yeah. 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 So hey, we're kind of like, we're running up against some time here, but I just sort of along the same line, like a hardest or scariest moment for either of you, like Sunny, it'd be for this year. Reba, if you had a hardest or scariest moment in your 3 years. So I'll start with you, Reba, and then Sunny, you can think about if you had a hardest or scariest this year. Reba, what about you?
This year, I will say, I mean, it wasn't easy, but I will say, like, this expedition was executed almost flawlessly for me. And the sort of only like mistake or downside for me is the last night we were out there at dusk, I had a case of the sleep monsters. So, the body was shutting down and I felt fine. We were riding and it was literally like rode headfirst into a tree. And that's where Greg was like, okay, and it's kind of a bummer because you're like, God, I'm just sleepy. Like, why can't I friggin' stay awake? And so we had to take a nap. We took an hour-and-a-half nap, and the bummer is that a storm came in while we were sleeping, erased the trail. We were smooth sailing, and the timing of it was just really bad. And so I went through this whole period of like, second guessing myself and like beating myself up for a minute and being like, I know the girl behind me passed us while we were sleeping, and now like all this stuff has happened, and we had the perfect race, and I blew it, and so I had this moment, like about a half a day of like really self-doubt, of like being really bummed at myself for like having to take a nap. It sounds ridiculous, but then I was like, okay, what's the alternative if I crashed and like broke my face, broke my bike? And I'm like, no, we made the smart decision for survival. And it doesn't matter if someone passed me during the night, which she didn't, you know, but yeah, you play tricks on yourself and the decision making. And I think that's the point. The decision making is so hard out there because you're tired, you're sleepy, you're like making things up in your head. And it's really hard to make good decisions. And while I thought that was a bad decision, I look at what if I'd actually not taken a nap and fallen, in a river or like whatever, gotten lost and all sorts of stuff like that. So that was kind of my low point for this year's race, which turned out to not be a big deal. The scariest stuff for me is crossing the frozen lakes that are cracking underneath you and you can hear the noise and you're just so puckered and you're just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So the water is the scariest thing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick, could you describe for folks what your bivy looked like? Because, obviously I follow you on the socials. I see that you and SV go out on, dates where you guys are building snow caves to figure out how to, sleep in the snow. Can you describe what your setup looked like? Because it's pretty impressive and it's minimalist, but go ahead.
It's super minimalist. I mean, you're basically a hotel on wheels. So everything you carry, you've got to carry, you know? And so you're trying to go really light, but you've got to have stuff that works. And so we had bivy sack, you know, a -40 sleeping bag, you know, and
You had a tarp though too, didn't you? Did you have some sort of tarp you would
yeah,
put over you?
this year the addition that I made because we were doing self-support is I brought a tarp that we could tie over trees to keep snow off it. So typically you find a spot you like that's out of the wind, that there's not too much snow to stomp down, because you got to stomp down a whole area. You got to like prep it, get it ready. You got to lay out your sleeping pad, your bivy sack, your sleeping bag. You've got your stove going at the same time to make hot water. We made a fire every night. We'd get branches and make a giant bonfire to like help us stay warm while we're setting up camp, because you're freezing. As soon as you stop, you're freezing. And so we'd make a big bonfire first, and that was our savior. And then, yeah, you set up your little camp, you make your meal, you've got your dehydrated meal, and then you try to get into bed, and you try to dry your socks and your wet clothes, and you've got your boots underneath your body so they don't get snow in them, and like you zip up everything because you might wake up and it snowed all over you. There's a lot of maintenance to it. All your batteries have to be inside your sleeping bag so they stay warm. Like there's all this stuff you have to do. And so setting up camp, and then in the morning you get up and you're freezing, you got to get out, put your boots, put your shit back on, pack it back in your bag and get going again. All that takes 45 minutes to an hour each time. And it's a process. It's a big deal. But I was proud of how we did it. But I will say making fire, like Sunny said, was essential.
Yeah. Sunny, hardest or scariest moment as a first timer this year for you? I mean, maybe it was just towing the line. I mean, that could have been the scariest moment, I would imagine, but yeah, maybe not.
In all honesty, the scariest moment was the very last night. I was pushing really hard. This was after Sarah and I had split up, and you know, I was now chasing the cutoff, trying to make it happen, pushing through the night, and I was facing the sleep monsters as well. So I knew I had to sleep no matter the cutoffs, no matter anything. And I laid down. It was snowing heavily, and it was really warm at that time. And my tarp, which I had, you know, for elements, had stayed with Sarah because, long story, but, you know, we had some epics in the night. So she had my tarp, didn't have it with me. I had nothing to, you know, try and keep myself out of the snow. And I just needed to sleep like an hour or two, to have my brain function again. And I did, but when I woke up, everything was wet. I mean, my sleeping bag soaked to the inside, my clothes were wet, everything was wet, all my gloves were wet. I had different gloves with me, everything was wet. And so I was really scared at that point because I still had, I don't know, maybe 12 miles or something like that. I knew if I didn't make it to the finish, or if the temperatures dropped for the next couple of hours, I was going to be screwed because I didn't have a dry anything. And I ended up, you know, having a trash bag on me and just trying to move really fast, trying to warm up. And it was fine because the temperatures were like 30 degrees, so it wasn't that cold. But because it was 30 degrees, you know, the snow was super wet, and so I was soaked head to toe. Yeah, that was really scary. The hardest moment, though, I would say, was a night before that. You know, I had started out as a solo racer, and I met Sarah, this other gal, on foot, and we teamed up. And we made a fantastic team and did so well together and really helped one another. She helped me, but I helped her. But it got to a point where we couldn't stick together, and she dropped out, having to manage that dynamic, which, in all honesty, I did not manage at all. I was really pig towards her after 2 hours or 2 nights of no sleep. You know, that to me was the actual hardest element of the race. And it wasn't physical. It wasn't even psychological for my own race, but the, you know, human interaction, just me facing the worst in my and taking that out on her, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole like social dynamic that you would never expect to encounter out there, with both of you at your, you know, maybe physical worst, mental worst at a time. Like, I could see how that could be a big problem for sure. Like, I want to be respectful of both of your time. We're almost at an hour, but if either of you had advice, you know, for those seeking not necessarily to do ITI, but just for those seeking something that they think seems unattainable or out of reach, but still yet tantalizing, like, do you have a couple words of wisdom for folks watching? Because I know we have a lot of people out there that are going to be inspired by you two, as they well should be. But any words of advice? And I'll start with you, Queenie.
I mean, I think it's awesome to plan an adventure. Don't go into the Iditarod or 24-hour racing or whatever as your first step. You know, don't do what Sunny did, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, but like plan a backyard adventure. Go camping. Like Yuri said, my husband and I went camping in the snow to see, like, we rode our bikes like a mile, camped out, like couldn't sleep for about an hour and like, let's go home, you know? So I think practicing with the gear, the equipment, but you can do it. You just have to have the skill. You can't just wing it in these adventure environments, but you can learn it and you can totally do it. You just have to prepare a little bit ahead of time. So get out this summer and do some adventures in your backyard.
Yeah. Sunny?
Same thing. Get out there and don't push somebody else's comfort zone, right? Push your own comfort zone. So just start wherever you are. That means that you want to go and do a 100-mile race. That's cool. If it means that you want to go and run your first 5K or just, you know, out on your own for the first time without a tent, like that's what matters. It's the incremental expanding of what you confidently can do, and that, to me, that makes the world go round. So go do it.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's baby steps, but friggin' take the step. Take the first baby step. Don't just sit there and think, could I do it? Could I do it? And that's what Alaska was for me, for Sunny. Like, could I do it? I don't know. We took the step, you know, to educate ourselves and learn. So take the baby step, then take another one, But don't just sit there and watch people like us and think that looks cool, because it's in you too.
Yeah, I like that. I think we'll end on that, folks. Keep taking those baby steps, right? And do your homework, educate yourself, get all the learnings, but keep taking those baby steps, because, right, at some point you'll be running, right? Or skiing the Iditarod, or biking the Iditarod, maybe. Yeah. You guys, it has been so rad chatting with you tonight. You know, I've stayed in my chair, which is good, so I didn't fanboy too hard. But thank you for giving up an hour of your evening and sharing your experience and inspiration and knowledge with folks. To our endurance audience, look both these amazing women up. Sunny has Awe Expeditions. If any of you are out there want to go conquer a big mountain, check her out. Or if any of you want to go to Kanab, Utah, and do a killer slot canyon or something like that. And those of you into gravel, go check out Sun Valley, right? Rebecca's Private Idaho. Hopefully in 2022, we'll have gravel camps again, so we can come back and be camp counselors again. But yeah, truly been my honor and pleasure chatting with you two amazing folks. Such an inspiration, and thank you for sharing that with our audience. And I wish you both well, and I can't wait to see you in person again. Cheers, you two.
Cheers. I finished my beer, so I can't cheers anymore.
Okay, good job. Way to finish it. Yeah. All right, you guys.
Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Ciao.